John and Quiet are back for another violent post-apocalyptic car chase in Season 2 of Peacock's original series, Twisted Metal. The comedy and the carnage, they're at an all-time high. But is the story worth your time? John and Quiet find themselves entering the deadly Twisted Metal tournament, a sinister demolition derby hosted by a mysterious man known as Calypso. As they try to survive an onslaught of dangerous new foes and familiar faces alike, things get complicated for John when he reunites with a long-lost acquaintance, the vigilante Dollface. Returning are Anthony Mackie, Stephanie Beatriz, Joe Sinanoa, Will Arnett, and Mike Mitchell, with some new additions like Patty Guggenheim, Sailor Bell Curda, Anthony Kerrigan, Tiana Okoye, Lisa Gilroy, Michael James Shaw, and Richard DeClercq. While each of the cast members fully embraced their roles, there were a few that were just absolute standouts thanks to the unhinged havoc they brought to the screen. Lisa Gilroy is Vermin, and if you look at her without all the funky makeup, you would never realize that she played the exterminator like Psycho. Vermin is this train wreck of a person, but so chaotic and unpredictable that her antics made me laugh and cringe all at the same time. Richard DeClercq plays a motorcycle-riding maniac with DID, and the way that he'll switch voices, it's unnerving, especially when coupled with his vacant and murderous eyes. And he's also got history with Sweet Tooth, so that makes for some ongoing excitement. And then, stealing the show every time he was on screen, Anthony Kerrigan is brilliant as the ultimate baddie Calypso. He's well-spoken, calm, and collected, even rational, to a point. And when he snaps, Kerrigan goes full lunatic, showcasing this unstoppable cruelty and savage temper, all to be bottled right back up following an explosion. He's clearly reached the latter portion of serenity now, insanity later mentality. Kerrigan is over the top in all of the right ways, building an uneven persona that makes it hard to ever let your guard down around him. But his presence also introduces a ringmaster of sorts into the arc, someone who's essential to give this season a unified direction and purpose. Anthony Mackie and Stephanie Beatriz are excellent together. Their chemistry can be a little antagonistic at times, but they also display a huge amount of compassion towards each other. Their friendship and then their relationship, it was one that I cheered on, hoping they would become a couple and then stick it out, even though I knew that at some point they may have to face off against one another in order to win the tournament. But in spite of that, they share a playful softness that makes them endearing. And their comedic timing together also complements their dynamic, allowing them to create easy laughs thanks to expertly placed lines with sarcastic inflections. But for as much as I loved so many of the characters, there were times when the antics became drawn out or overplayed, repeating a joke or a line of thinking so that it was no longer funny, but instead tired or annoying. I don't remember this happening a ton, but when the story would stop down to re-emphasize a punchline or action, it also slowed the pacing, creating moments, however brief, that were a detriment to the plot rather than a humorous benefit. I had a lot of fun with the first series, as we're introduced to John Doe and the world where there are insiders and outsiders, with the innies having luxury, security, and conveniences like food, water, and bathrooms. And for this season, while we do get introduced to several new cast members, this doesn't need to explain as much of the world and the surroundings to us. The premise, it's that Calypso has promised to grant one wish to whoever can win the Twisted Metal tournament, a car race that's deadly and where pretty much anything goes. The twist is that the wish can be absolutely anything. And while that could feel a little unbelievable, maybe fantastic, we all have to remember that this series is based on a video game, so logic or plausibility doesn't always have to be part of every single story element. Now, I was surprised at the amount of emotional depth and heart that the show contains, especially as it continues to grow as the season progresses. There are more than a couple of gut punch moments, and for a show that's all about demolishing an opponent's car in the hopes of eliminating them from a race just because of their death, this contains a surprisingly impactful and engaging storyline. Now, something curious for this season is that not only are there 2 more episodes than the last, but instead of dropping all of them at once, only the first 2 are going to premiere, and then we'll have weekly episodic releases. I do think there's enough in each episode to make it worthwhile for an individual drop, but because I had access to the whole season, it was an awesome binge, especially when we get to moments that are nail-biting cliffhangers, and there are a few of them. So while I am a much larger fan of full-on binges, the episodes each contain effective drama, risk and peril, character development, even violent escapism to keep you coming back week after week. And as far as the action's concerned, this is chock full of wild car chases, creatively exciting weaponry, and then exhilarating stunts that are just pure violent mayhem. Several times this felt like a mix of Mad Max and Death Race with explosions, colorful characters, and then a never-ending bloodlust. But it also contains a certain sweetness thanks to the backstories of our characters. We get to peer into John's life more, and although it is a complete blank slate to him, it's a nice story progression to learn about him as he learns about himself. And there's also a new character introduced this season named Mayhem. She helps to create this familial bond that adds suspenseful emotional anguish when the things get hairy, and they do. And then probably the most shocking is the dynamic between Sweet Tooth and Stu. Now, of course, it's incredibly dysfunctional and psychotic, but their banter showcases a camaraderie that shouldn't work, but strangely does. And thanks to the pairing of Joe Sienoa's physical performance and Will Arnett's voice acting, we get a character who is snarky, odd, even endearing, and at least as endearing as a maniacal killer clown who sets himself on fire can be. But I found myself sympathizing with Sweet Tooth. There are tiny moments where we get to see into his psyche, and then we can understand some of his reactions and behaviors. And in these quiet times, it was refreshing to see the story give him more depth than just some crazy killer. Now, the special effects, they work for the show. And thanks to a stripped-down world, the production doesn't have to have massive elaborate sets to showcase the violent interactions. We just need some open tarmac for vehicles to speed around and fire off their weaponry. There's one race in particular that features a ton of items that go boom, and the best part is watching the reaction of John and Quiet as they have zero idea what these armaments are going to do and are just as surprised as we are in an attack. I had a lot of fun with the second season of Twisted Metal. The characters are rich in both personality and chaos, leading to energetic and violent exchanges that build to an emotionally wrecking finale. And despite some repetitive storytelling elements, the arcs are engaging and darkly comedic, subtly interweaving light social commentary with the ferocious personalities to deliver a story that captivates and thrills while also tickling the funny bone. I wish this season would drop all at once like the previous season, but even with an episodic weekly release, the character antics, deep familial dynamics, and suspenseful excitement contained within each episode create enough of a bond to keep coming back week after week. And you don't even have to have played or even know about the video game to enjoy this. It's an escapist thrill ride that's going to make you wince, laugh, and groan, all while fighting back a tear or two. There is a lot of sex, some nudity, a ton of profanity, and then a bunch of violence. I give Season 2 of Twisted Metal 4 out of 5 couches. This is such an easy series to get hooked on. From the characters to the action, it just all creates this world that I don't want to live in, but I certainly want to watch. Okay, are you a fan of this show? Do you have a favorite character? I would love to know who you're rooting for in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.